never smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some disease. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to run. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome guys. Miss Liz in the house, and we had an incredible guest this afternoon. We had Sherry Lynn Williams in the house, and tonight we have the beautiful Weam Namou in the house, and we're going to be talking about her book, The Path of Unconsciousness, and all of the incredible work that she does with filmmaking and all that other good stuff. But the tea that we're serving tonight is called Teaching, Healing, Transformation. That is the tea we are serving in the house. That is Weam's tea. But before we get started, you guys know how Miss Liz rolls. Let's get all over to those platforms: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and then get all over to those podcast apps, Spotify, Podbean, Listen Notes, and all those other good ones that are out there. Miss Liz is on all those platforms out there, so check those out as well. So let's get started with disclaimer, and then we got a beautiful bio, and then we're going to get Weam in here, and we're going to spill some tea together. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicating to sharing real-life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own good judgment when considering any action or decision that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of this discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, directly at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com, or visit my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. Miss Liz welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Well, welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz, where stories travel across generations, cultures, and continents, reminding us that every journey carries wisdom. Today's guest brings us a story that spans from ancient roots to modern voice, from Baghdad to America, from silence to powerful storytelling. Please join me in welcoming Weam Namou, Eric Hoffer's award-winning author, filmmaker, spiritual teacher, and storyteller. Born in Baghdad, Iraq, Weam is of Chaldean heritage, descendant of the ancient Neo-Babylonians, and still connected to the Aramaic language, the language of Jesus. As just 10 years old, her life changed forever when her family fled Iraq and began a new chapter in the United States. From that journey, Weam had built a life rooted in storytelling, culture preservation, and spiritual exploration. With over 20 books, award-winning films, and global recognition, her work bridges identity, history, healing, and belonging. Her tea reflects her purpose: teaching, healing, transformation. From her acclaimed films, Pomegranate, to her culture and spiritual work, and her powerful book, The Path of Consciousness, ancient wisdom for a modern world. Weam invites us to explore not just where we come from, but who we are becoming. So grab your cup and lean in. Today's tea time is about identity, heritage, healing, and the power of finding your voice across the world. Let me get Weam in here and let's spill some tea. Welcome, Weam.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. And yourself?
I'm good, and thank you for that introduction.
Oh, you're very welcome. I hope I pronounced everything correctly. If not, we're going to get to it during tea time.
Yes, thank you.
So let's start off with who you were as a little girl and who you are now.
Well, like you mentioned, I was born in Baghdad to an ancient lineage known as the Chaldeans, who are Neo-Babylonians who still speak Aramaic, the language of Jesus. It is unfortunately considered one of the dying languages, but it still exists in my community. And we were minority Christians in that area. And at age 9, we left Iraq because of political and other reasons. And as you mentioned, I arrived to the United States at age 10.
Oh, and how did you find that? Was it a hard transition for you?
Yes, it was a big culture shock. I often tell the story of how when we left, my family did not tell me or my younger brother that we were leaving Iraq because we fled in secrecy. And we couldn't get our visa directly from Iraq. We went to Jordan and lived there for less than a year. And during that time, I got a hold of a book called Gone with the Wind in Arabic. I was 9 years old. I read the book from beginning to end, and then my family took me to the movie theater for this first time to watch Gone with the Wind in the theater. And so, when we landed in Metro Detroit, I was expecting to see horse carriages and puffy dresses and all the fun stuff that happened in the 1800s in Atlanta, Georgia, that did not exist here in Michigan in the 1980s.
So much misleading, right? Like you think I'm coming to the United States, I get to see all the poopy dresses, I get to see all these spotlights.
Right. I was expecting to meet many Scarlett O'Haras around me.
With the work that you do today, tell us a little bit about who you are today for the listeners.
So I realized early on that I wanted to write books, but I was supposed to go to law school, and I really reflected. There was a time period because you can only start in the fall, and I graduated fairly early from college. And during the time that I had time to reflect, I decided I was planning to go to law school and write on the side, and I decided that I would do what I really love to do, which is write full time and travel the world. And so at 19, I started writing books. And then as soon as I graduated from college, I was like 20, I started traveling to different parts of Europe and then other places around the world. And in the mid 1990s, I was in a bookstore at Heathrow Airport where I realized there was so much misrepresentation about the communities of my background and my culture. So from seeing that, I decided that I wanted to write real life stories about my people and my heritage. But in doing so, I found there was so much interest from the Western world. I didn't know how unique our background was. When you're who you are, you're who you are. And most people said, oh, we've never heard about Chaldeans. Many people still have not, except in Michigan, where there has the largest population in the world exists. And I started learning through the interest of my own readers and my own fans about my own background. And I discovered that they were philosophers, mathematicians, astronomers, astrologers. They was incredibly wise, and they were able to hold on to their names for thousands of years, despite all the oppression and genocide and so many things that worked against them. And in the spiritual realm, I also discovered that they were healers. So I was able to reconnect through my own writing, through my own teachers, to my ancient lineage, which I think has been buried because of all the other factors that happen in the Middle East. It's been buried for thousands of years, but really needs to come to the surface because they had such incredible things to teach.
I like that you're keeping the heritage alive and the language alive. Could you say a couple of words so we could hear you speak the language?
Shlama illah.
And what does
Shlama illah is salamu alaikum, which is saying hi. And in Aramaic, so Arabic is derived from a lot of it is from the Aramaic language. And actually the entire Middle East was at one point spoke the Aramaic language. And then after the invasion of the Arab Muslims in the 7th century, then slowly, and it was mostly the majority were Christian, and then it started changing to the Arabic language, and it started changing religion as well.
Well, we have a couple of comments coming in. Weam's story is truly touching and eye-opening, amazing conversation, really inspiring. We have a question here for you is, what inspired your journey into storytelling?
I don't think I can take any credit for that because I feel like when you have a calling, I was talking to somebody today about this, one of the projects that I'm working on. And I was telling her that when something just feels so authentic and organic and it calls for you, you just kind of answer. So I can't really, what drew me is just feeling like this is what I wanted to do. But then originally what I thought is for me that I just was interested in writing books. But over the years, I realized that there was something much more meaningful in what I was trying to do, which is to preserve my heritage and to pass on teachings that were passed on to me for centuries and for thousands of years. So it shifted, the meaning of what I was supposed to do shifted. And the reason I got into the film industry is because when I would go, like I was at the British Columbia, there was the Surrey Writers Conference that they have every year. And I met with very notable filmmakers. This was, I believe, in 2003. And from their reaction, I knew that they're not going to believe in my stories. So I decided to go to film school and make my own films as a way to continue telling the stories. So I think I was at the heart of what I'm doing is finding different ways to tell stories, whether it's through journalism, whether it's through poem. I studied poetry in Prague through the University of New Orleans summer program. And as I said, filmmaking, I took a whole year of full-time schooling. But when I look at it, my passion was to continue these stories that I keep falling in love with the more I learn about them.
Well, it's a learning and growing experience for you as well, right?
Very much so, and it's been very healing because some of the stories, and this came later, I had to find the courage to find my voice to write memoir. And I remember that was incredibly scary, but I had amazing spiritual teachers that have guided me throughout the years. And I realized that through each book that I wrote, from beginning to end, as I was navigating who I was and who my ancestors were, and the incredible women, the goddesses that came from that part of the region, that again were buried by history, that was empowering me at the same time. And as that happened, I found it was changing the people that were reading my books. Like I have a book called Mesopotamian Goddesses that is very, very historical, but at the same time provides lessons that I learned from my Native American teachers and my teacher, Lindsay Andrews, who passed away a couple of years ago. I was in her school for 4 years. And then I have a 4-part memoir series called Healing Wisdom for a Wounded World that brings in the shamanic teachings that I was taught that benefited my life. And I think that when something benefits you, automatically one of the things that you feel to do is to share it with the world.
Absolutely. We have a question here from Marcelin Isaac Potter. How did growing up between cultures shape your identity, Weam?
Oh, it shaped my identity a lot. We were minority Christians in a Muslim country. And so we are basically, you don't have a lot of the same rights, but my best friend was Muslim and I loved her and her family, the neighborhood. I was born in Baghdad. So most of our friends and neighbors were Muslim, and we got along with them. I think the leadership is not the same as the regular people that are, your neighbors. They're not necessarily the same, and the religious aspect of it is not the same. And I really didn't know that I was different. I knew I was Christian, but I didn't know what else was different about us, because my friendship and my love for my neighbors was so strong. I started learning more the difference in who I was as a Chaldean when I came to the United States. Well, part of that is because, again, the fear that we lived in Iraq, we were not really encouraged to flaunt who we are, to speak our native language. And so everything was hush, 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 hush. And I think that if I had not left, if my family had not been wise enough to have us leave, I would not have been able to do any of the things I'm currently doing. I certainly would not have been able to research and look into my ancestry and as I am today.
Let's talk about ancestry. What did you find out about your ancestors that really surprised you?
The first recorded writer in history is a woman named Enheduanna. She was a priestess, she was a princess, and she's the first poet. She was the daughter of Sargon, and she's from Mesopotamia. Oh. And her disc was discovered by the British archaeologists in 1927. And the reason that she is considered the first writer is because traditionally before her, writing was invented in ancient Mesopotamia, but the writers prior to her, traditionally, you are not supposed to sign your name. But Enheduanna decided that she did want to sign her name, that she wanted to own ownership of her writing. And so at the end of her poetry, she would write, "It is I, Enheduanna, who wrote this, my king, something has never done before." She took ownership. That began that type of ownership that we have today, that I have on my books when I have my name, originals, that started in ancient Mesopotamia. And there was so many other women. There's Gula, the goddess Gula, who was a goddess of medicine, and she was always surrounded by dogs, because dogs were considered very healing. And what had happened, unfortunately, over the years, you have Inanna, you have Ishtar. The role of women was literally vanished more and more over the centuries, to the point where her role barely even exists. And in the process of her vanishing, she's not really acknowledged in her historical land. And for me, I felt like part of my responsibility is to bring her to life through the book. For instance, Mesopotamian goddesses. And actually, I have to say, Enheduanna is one of the characters in my film Pomegranate, which is available in 25 countries and many streaming platforms. She's a character. How? Because the main character, Niran, is in love with Enheduanna and her poetry. And through that poetry, she is empowered to make choices for herself. So that is my way. That is how storytelling, and how it empowered me, I want to help it empower others.
Well, we have a question here for you, and then I want to get into your book. I'm going to bring up your book. So for all the listeners that are watching and joining us tonight, we're going to pull up her book, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But how do you preserve heritage through your work? From Russ McCall.
Yeah, through my writings, I'm very committed. One of the things that Scott Rosenfeld, who is the producer of Home Alone, he's the executive producer of Pomegranate, my feature film. And when we talked, and I've interviewed him, it's on my podcast. People can find it on my YouTube channel. But he told me that he would like to do what I'm doing, where he can focus on writing and certain topics. I found that very fascinating, because I thought, I think what I do differently is, instead of me being this type of filmmaker who is going and making films as a director or directing other works, it looks like what I did, and I only realized this later from people's responses, is that I focused on the mission the deeper meaning and the deeper impact of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And that has allowed me to create the kind of work. I think if I was just said, okay, you have this opportunity to direct this one film, but then there wasn't the connection, I don't think I could have done as good of a job. The other thing is I was executive director of the Chaldean Cultural Center, which houses the world's first and only Chaldean museum. And I was executive director for 5 years until I resigned because of my film career. And during the tours and during the programming, I took advantage of that time to educate schools, field trips that came, others. We did so many interviews, so many programming to help people learn about the Chaldeans, and that we're not dead. We actually are still alive. Many people think we only, much of Genesis takes place in ancient Mesopotamia in the Bible, and Chaldeans are mentioned quite a bit. Prophet Abraham was from Ur, land of the Chaldeans. But people think that we only exist in the ancient books, no longer in real life.
So, Weam, have you ever gone back to Iraq?
I went in 2000. During that time, Saddam was in power, and I went during Easter of the year 2000 and visited with family in Baghdad. And I was able to go to the northern part of Iraq, which was where my ancestors' villages are, and unfortunately, which was destroyed by ISIS.
So that was destroyed by ISIS.
Yes, our so Tel Kepa was the largest Christian town in northern Iraq in 2014, and it's where my parents and grandparents were born. In 2014, it was attacked by ISIS, and some of the villages or some of the towns that were later rebuilt, but never Tel Kepa, that was completely destroyed. And after 2014, Michigan had the second largest population of Chaldeans in the world prior to 2014. And after 2014, so many they fled Iraq. And so currently Michigan has the largest population of Chaldeans in the world.
So that's what got you to Michigan.
I came long before. I mean, like I said, thank God, my family had the wisdom. There was already a Chaldean community here, much smaller than it is today. But when we came, there wasn't not even half of the number that are today. But over the years, what happened in 2000, we were about 1.5 million Chaldeans prior to 2003 war. And then now it's less than 150,000. So, yeah.
Wow. The numbers show, eh?
Yeah.
I'm going to pull up your book so we can talk about your book, and then I have some other questions here. But I want to pull up this book because this is the book that is this your latest book?
Yes, my latest book is this is the beginning of a series, and the one that I wrote right after that is called The Path of Consciousness for Writers. So again, I just feel it's so important for us what we learn that we share it in our material. And what I do is I use my own stories as examples of whatever it is that I am including in, for instance, The Path of Consciousness. I do want to share a story about how I chose that title. So in 2016, I was with my family, my husband and my 2 young children. We were in Mexico, and we went into this park area where they had all these like zip line and different opportunities for them to play. And I saw that they were providing a Temescal experience. So my husband said, go ahead, if you want to experience that, and I'll watch the kids. And when I went, they did an incredibly beautiful ceremony, shamanic ceremony. And it had the same teachings that I had been learning in the shamanic school where I was as a student for an apprentice for Lynn V. Andrews School. And they went around the wheel. Native Americans are such believers of everything being in a circle, and that's the way of balance. And so they went around the wheel and what the meaning of the teachings were, which I found very incredible. It was a little bit different than the teachings that I had of the sacred wheel versus the medicine wheel. There's so many different wheels, but the whole thing is the same, there's like the centerness that we learn from. When I came home, that experience was so profound. And in the pathway, which looks exactly as you see it right now, except obviously this is an illustration, to get to that area, I had to walk through this pathway that's called the path of consciousness. And I came home and I started a community, a writing and spiritual community called the Path of Consciousness. And it grew and evolved, and we did retreats up until COVID. We were doing retreats, and people were benefiting amazingly from it. So I continue to expand it and provide services, whether it's one-on-one or with some of the people. Like currently, I have a program with one of the woman, a young woman who graduated from Lynn School, but I was her mentor. After I graduated, I became a mentor for apprentices. And I just think this is how you pass things on. One thing that's very special, particularly about these teachings, even though they are for everybody, but especially in Lynn's case, and the teachings were coming, these ancient teachings were coming from the feminine perspective, from the feminine energy. And so that's where they differ a little bit. And so many of my mentors, my mentors were women, and the women that I mentored were women. And is something we continue to pass it on to daughters, to sisters, and so on and so forth.
I just love the picture, like the image of the cover. It looks so peaceful, like the purple and the greens and the gold. It kind of just takes you on a journey. Like when you look at the cover straight through, you can see what's at the end of the rainbow, like what's at the end of the path. So it's kind of taking you in. It's kind of pulling you in. Is that what you were going for when you did the
That's
cover?
what pulled me. I didn't know that was what I was going, but it pulled me in. So my husband was literally on the other side of where the sign was and where this arch was. And I was pulled in, and then I was looking around, and to the right, it said Garden of Harmony with as a way of entrance. And my name means harmony in Arabic, Weam. And then you go through this other like path, and you just feel like you're really in another world. And interestingly, most people were on the other side. They were enjoying all these different games and all these different adventures. And on this other side, this was very quiet, tranquil people, like life. And the ceremony, the people that participated in the ceremony, we were a total of 7. You had like thousands of people on the other side participating in we were 7 people, and it was an amazing ceremony. And I've been wanting to write books. I had a very busy, my schedule was fairly busy up until last year when my film finally came out, and we did like the premiere and screenings and such. And so this year has been more, I'm still busy, but more focused on the writing, and of course, working on another film project and such, but I'm more so behind my desk. So it's been calmer. And I'm going to be expanding the Path of Consciousness series.
I just love it because it's like I'm looking at the image right in front of me, and it's like I'm being pulled in. It's like, come and see what we got. Like, come and see the journey. Beautiful graphics. Whoever did the cover, amazing.
Thank you.
Do you want to do a shout out to who did the cover?
Ritika, she knows who she is. So Ritika, her and I are actually, we have a program together it's called Author Authority, where we help writers. And she takes care of the social media stuff, and she takes care of graphics and such. So thank you, Ritika. So
I always like to give shout outs to the cover makers, because some people might be looking to have a cover made for a new book or a new film or something like that, right? And they might not know about the incredible work that's out there. Even though you're not on the show, we can still give you shout outs. We can still get your name
thank
out
you.
there.
That's a very smart thing to do. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Well, you're very welcome. We're going to get into some questions now. We're going to start with the identity and root questions. And the first one I have for you is, you were born in Baghdad as a Chaldean? Chaldean?
Mm-hmm.
How has that identity shaped the way you see the world and your work today?
Well, what I realize is, if you don't know who you are, if you don't really connect to your inner self and dig and understand who you are, where you came from, you go through a lot of pain, and you experience limitations that are not necessarily on the surface. It might seem like, oh, it's your husband, or it's your kids, or it's this, or it's that. But really, there are oftentimes deep-rooted issues that come from where you come from, where you were born, who your ancestors are, what are some of the traumas that your ancestors experienced, as well as what are the powerful threads that are in your lineage. So I discovered, in my lineage, there are a number of healers. My father was he was the, what do you call it? Head of the accounting department for the railroad station in Baghdad. That was his title. That was his professional title. Oftentimes at home, we'd be in our nightgowns. We'd get a knock on the door. Somebody comes in pain. And my dad, I would sit and watch as my mom would bring this tub of warm water and this bar of soap that was made from olive oil and very natural ingredients that we use for everything. And it was great for the hair, for the skin, everything. And my dad would sit in front of this person who was wailing in pain, whether they had like a broken bone or strained muscle, whatever it is. And he would just feel, he was a bone setter. And I understood later, we just thought, oh yeah, Baba did this and Baba did that. But I didn't know he was a healer. So he would just feel the person's leg or whatever parts of their bodies and fix them. And he would know just by touching them that, hey, this is not for me. You need to go to the hospital right away. But many people would prefer coming to him first to see whether he could treat them or if they should go to the hospital. And he took care of, babies, grown men, women, whoever it was. Same thing with my paternal aunt. She was a healer. My great-grandmother, Maria, she was a healer and a businesswoman. And when I was learning about this, and I thought, oh, so we're not, this impression that women from the Middle East are weak or they are all oppressed or they're this or that. Well, this is not entirely true, although what's true is so much of their rights, there's so much attempts to take away their rights and not allow them to flourish. So it's not that we are weak, but there was such a strong attempt to keep us, buried or keep our talents buried. I also realized, because as a writer, I was having so many I thought were writer's block. Well, what I realized was those were because I was thinking, well, how do I tell? There was a story that I was having an issue telling called The Great American Family, which that's the book that won an Eric Hoffer Award. So I remember when I called Lynn, she was she had already, I don't know how many books, not 20 at that, almost 20 books at that time. And I read one of her books, and I called her for some literary advice. And I said, yeah, I'm having a hard time writing this story. And she was able, because of her, she's a mystic, she was able to draw out of me what was holding me back, which really shocked me. She told me things that I needed to hear. This is another thing that I think our society just is afraid to tell truths about things that would serve us. If I am not healthy right now for some reason, I am better off if you point out what you see is not healthy about me and me take care of it, rather than you just kind of coddle me and let the whatever disease it is, whether it's my mental thoughts or whatever it may be, maybe it's food, whatever it is, to eat me up. And there are ways to do that. I'm not saying you just approach somebody and say, but there has to be some
yourself.
Yeah, it's not like, okay, you know what, you need to lose like 5 pounds or something. But there are ways, and I it's gotten to the point where, but Lynn saw some things that when she addressed them at first, it was like, no, like I resisted. But then it was so truthful that I thought, oh my God, she made me look into something, what we call the dark side, which I really needed to look into. So I realized what it was that was stopping me from writing this book. And it was the fear that I had lived with, not only as a child in Iraq, but my ancestors before me who have passed on. They leave that aura with you. You don't even realize it. You don't see it. But then you have to really look into and research your own heritage to understand that. Well, it took me, when I started the school, I was in that stuck mode. And by the time I graduated, it was like, I think a year after I graduated, the book came out. It won an Eric Hoffer Award. And the documentary that I produced and directed with the same title, The Great American Family, won over a dozen awards.
Wow.
And I know it's not even just, it was because I had to heal. I worked on healing certain things that allowed me to really open up and not be afraid to express myself as a writer, because I finally realized, hey, I'm not living in Baghdad where I have to have the fears that I had held over there. It took me a lot of convincing with myself and a lot of work to understand that I would not be in the type of danger to share the story that I was sharing. And once I did that, from that point, I just continued writing book after book. And then I worked on my film, Pomegranate, and then now I'm working on my another book. So yeah, like spirituality, the things, thank you very much. So spirituality really helped me, and the amazing people. And my first teacher, and it wasn't just Lynn, it was many people before her. My first teacher was a man from India, Narendra. My second teacher was a Native American man and his female partner. They had a structured classroom setting in their home, in their apartment, with 2 students. And he had studied with the Tibetans. And then fast forward, when I had my kids and my husband, I got involved with Lynn's school, and I was suspicious in the beginning, because I thought, hey, I've always worked one-on-one with people. My last teacher, we were in a house, and it was like, lab night was in their home and what have you. And how does energy work happen over the phone or over the internet? I was suspicious of that, but I was proven, that it does happen, and it works, and it did amazing work.
Well, we got a couple more questions that are coming into the studio, and I want to get those out to you. We're going to start with the first one here is, and it comes in from Paula Jackson. What role does spirituality play in your storytelling?
Oh, I pray before, if my book, The Path of Consciousness for Writers, I share how I pray before I write what I write to get guidance. I was in London with my son in 2024. We visited Barbara Cartland's house. She's one of the most prolific writers. And her granddaughter, Tara, she gave us a tour of the house. And I remember something that she told me. She said, yeah, before she would go to sleep, she would pray on, I think she's written over 700 novels she's published. She was a romance writer. But what I liked about her is just seeing, like, okay, how does she do this? Because Tara took me to the office where she wrote, and she basically would verbally share the story, and she had somebody was taking notes or typing it or what have you, and she had what she called a factory with like 7 women working for her. But one thing that I had never in the interviews heard Barbara say, which Tara shared with me, is that at night she would pray for the right story or for God to help her reveal, what she was going to work on the next day. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I had not heard of that. And I believe in that. I do. I pray. And I believe that the writing, this is something that Mesopotamia gave for us, is that type of practice, especially when you are using the pen and putting down from your thoughts through your nervous system into the paper, something that communication happens with your higher self, whatever you want to call. I mean, some people, whether you call it God or spirit or your higher self, something is happening where this information is being downloaded from where you don't even really need to go into, okay, where's this information going? But you need to just trust the process and believe in yourself that the messaging that you're getting, communicate with that is, well, why should I write this next book? What does that mean to me? And kind of this is part of the exploring, and it becomes so much fun, because in the process you learn more about yourself, And the project becomes an exploration of the story and of yourself. So spirituality plays an important part. Also, I like to utilize things in the best possible way. Even it's like if you're cooking something delicious to serve people, you want to put the best ingredients in it. You create it with lots of love, because you don't want to serve people something harmful. I look at my writing the same way. If I'm going to put a book out there into the universe, I want that book to have that kind of energy. What is the purpose of putting years into a book, whether it's years or whatever time period I'm going to put? What is the purpose behind that? And I do believe that our actions, the seeds of my father being the healer that he was, created certain circumstances for us that even had us experience what we're lucky to experience here in the United States. But that was part of what my father planted. So I feel that we're also planting things into the universe. So I want to make sure that the spirituality, it's a blessing, not so that it's a blessing on others, and that blessing would come back to my family and my children and their children and so on and so forth. Native Americans believe that when they make decisions on something, it's 7 generations ahead and 7 generations back. And what that
I love that you say that, because I bring that up quite often on Tea Time. It takes 7 generations to break a pattern in a family. So like if there's any abuse or any addiction or anything, it takes 7 generations to break that. So that would have to be 7 people, like 7 women or 7 men, to break that cycle. And now if one breaks that and one doesn't break the cycle, then it starts again. It goes, and I feel like that's how world peace is, right? Until we get that 7th generation, we're never going to get world peace. We're never going to get the cycle and the pattern broken. The 7 ancestries had knowledge of this. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I mention that all the time. The 7 generations, look into it. Ancestry, there's stories that matter today that we need to keep sharing, and we need to keep bringing that to the table, because those stories are what is a part of our journey as well. And we're creating that storytelling. And when you were talking about food and all of that, I'm thinking is pen and paper and food. So when you're writing, is there a certain dish that you're eating, or that brings the words out easier for you, or a fruit or a dessert or anything that you'd like to share?
I'm a lover of coffee. I love drinking coffee when I'm writing, but I'm going to tell you a secret, okay? I have had my laptop on the kitchen counter as I'm cooking because I want to get something out, and technology has been so wonderful. I know people have issues with certain things, but when something is created, always try to look at, if God is providing this in the universe, how can I use it for the positive? So one of the things that are available for us, which I found out by accident, which I realized in my last one of my last writers group, they didn't know about it, and I thought, oh well, you can listen to your so let's say I want to edit chapter 1, for instance, and sometimes I sit behind my computer a lot, and sometimes I try to start standing just for my posture, but then I realized that you can listen to the chapter. It could be read to you. So once I discovered that, I noticed I'll have the computer will be reading the chapter while I'm cooking, this delicious okra stew and the rice, and getting salad ready or whatever for before my son comes home from school or whatever I'm doing. But it also allows me to disconnect from the technology aspect and listen to the story with my whole entire body, and not just like me with my eyes. And there's a difference in that feeling. There's a difference when you're listening to the story, and I will catch things that I did not catch while I was sitting down with regards to how I want to tell something. So there's so many different opportunities right now for people to tell their stories without the fatigue sometimes of, especially when I started in the beginning, it was like reading and rereading and going over something. My script Pomegranate, the last version that was used when we were shooting the film, it's called It's V43, stands for version 43. That's how much that work is.
And that's another thing. Many people don't know how much work goes in behind a film, right? They think, oh, it's done in a month. There's so many editings and so many revisions, and oh, this worked the first time, and then you watch it through and you're like, oh, I'm not sure if that's what I want to. It doesn't relate. And we have a question here that came in about the film. So what inspired you for the film of Pomegranate?
Pomegranate. Well, what happened is during the 2016 elections, everybody was going, attacking each other, the liberals and the conservatives, and it was just getting out of hand. And I tried to get on social media and say a couple of words that I was gonna, there was no room for me.
She was gonna lose it.
I was like, I'm not gonna be heard for sure. You really needed to be aggressive and a different type of personality. So what I did, I reflected and I was like, I want to say this and I want to say that. So what I did, and that has also become part of my process and just my lifestyle. If there is something that I think has importance that I want to express and create, what I will do is I will take that energy and create something, whether it's a book or it's a film or something, or even if it's a speaking, like if I'm invited to speak somewhere and it becomes what I'm speaking about, so I can transform that energy. So I have learned how to shift energy, choreograph energy in a way that will take what I'm feeling so that I'm not denying what I'm feeling. If I'm feeling angry or frustrated or hurt, whatever I'm feeling, we're not to deny that. It's just not to get addicted to that feeling, and to know how to pull yourself out of that feeling when it's time, or how to take that energy and transform it. Let's go back to food again. Obviously, you can tell I like about. I spend a lot of time in the kitchen. We'll go back. Okay, good. I'm glad. So let's talk about like leftovers, right? So when you take that and you feel like I don't want to waste this food. I have some stray cats in the. Depending on what the food is, right? Some things you can't, but I'm gonna think like, well, I'm gonna use this. So this goes to the stray cats. This food is really good and I can make this and that out of it. And that one, my sister really likes this, or her husband. And so you go through this process of shifting what you're going to do. And those are decisions, just like whether you're working on a project or you're making decisions. And really, it's about the smallest decisions. What happens when you get into the spiritual life, you don't prioritize, what I'm going to be writing. This is the most important act in my day. No. Other parts of washing the dishes sometimes is the most important part of the what you're doing, because if your sink is just, out of whack and it's like there's chaos in your house, it creates chaos inside of you. And then the way you wash the dishes, if you're doing it angrily, and we used to work so much around the wheel. So by the way, going back to the book, The Path of Consciousness, or even in my schooling with Lynn, we used to go around the wheel all the time to go through aspects of our lives. And we were taught that we were doing it regularly on paper, in practice, in meditation, to the point where when you are washing a dish in that circular movement, you are going around the wheel and healing certain aspects of the day. If somebody really ticked you off earlier in the day, and you can do a certain like prayer and try to understand. And these are all things that are in my book that people can use in their daily lives. I have a monthly, it used to be monthly, but now it's every other month, where I have an online writing ritual where it's open for anybody and it's for free, where people can come on and we go around the wheel and we do other practices as well. So, with regards to how I was feeling about the film. So politically, I was not liking what I was seeing, because it was reminding me of, I was thinking, we have the freedom here to have a conversation. We have the freedom to have different beliefs, and that's okay. And I was starting to feel like it felt like how it was in Iraq, where you have to believe one way or the other without being attacked. that was very difficult for me to see. I also was having issues with some of the extremists of how they felt about women in the Middle East and how with the whole thing with the hijab. So I said, I am going to take the stories that I find important and my surrounding women feel important in my community. And I'm going to create this film where it's, by the way, the first Iraqi American feature film. It's led by women. There's these two beautiful women that live across from each other. One is a Muslim and one is a conservative Christian. And they literally go at it in a very authentic way. I mean, telling each other what we really do tell each other in real life. People loved it. It's won more than 50 international awards around the world. And I think, and it's full of humor, by the way, it's full of love and humor. But I think the reason it has received that kind of recognition is because it's so authentic. They're able to confront each other with things that they can be honest. And we're lacking that right now. We're trying to be so afraid, tiptoeing, not hurting people's feelings. I'm sorry, but like that is very depressing. That is making us where that is how we lived, where we could not say. We were so afraid. And I carried that for years and I had to undo that. And now I'm here watching this happening to the people who we came to this country to experience what some people are trying to take away.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you're bringing that up, Weam, because, we're going backwards instead of forward for a lot of things in a lot of different countries. You're in the States, I'm in Canada, and we're seeing that. We're seeing change in the countries that promised us all of this good stuff. And they're going back and they're kind of reversing the words, right? Where freedom and you'll feel safe. There's safety. There's stability here in our country. Where right now we're feeling that in our countries, and we're not feeling that safety and that stability because we don't know what they're doing. They're flip-flopping everything, right? And I'm glad that you're bringing it up that film is about women, because last month was Women's Month, and we really tried hard to get Weam on in March, but I just want us to understand that women should be celebrated year-round, not just 1 month, year-round. There are incredible women out there, incredible storytellers out there, incredible filmmakers like yourself, Weam, that, 1 month is not good enough. We need it year-round. We need to start having those talks as well. We have a couple more questions here, and then I want to get your final words and all that good stuff, and where people can find out, like, time is just flying by really fast. We have a question here from Real Estate with Kate. How important is language in preserving identity?
Well, the Chaldean Aramaic language, I mean, imagine when you are speaking a language that was spoken by Jesus. That's how old it is. And my mother, the way she spoke it so fluently, so do my siblings, and I studied it for years. There's a different feeling, and from what I heard is in the Bible, some of the translations even create like a different sense, even spiritually, of the meaning that was. And I know with everything, I mean, you can keep digging deeper and deeper to find something. But I think language is very important. It's part of your identity. But at the same time, you think, okay, if this becomes a dying language, what does that mean? What does that mean? And I guess that something that can't completely die is the story. So while it saddens me, and we were doing a lot of programs for the Aramaic language at the Chaldean Cultural Center, and there's still classes, and I'm not saying, I mean, it could continue and have a revive and everything like that, and hopefully that's what will happen. But even if at one point at some time, because what happens over the years, like my children were born here, and they're connected to they're Americans. I mean, this is who they are, and so they're not as interested in this. But so while I can't force them to learn the Aramaic language, even though like in church they'll say the prayers in Aramaic and some things like that, but what about their children and their children, right? But the one thing that we can preserve in whatever language that we are together sharing, you know, if it's the English language or whatever down the line, you know, hundreds or thousands of years down the line, is the story. I think we get inspired by stories. I was inspired by Scarlett O'Hara. I was 9 years old. She was not speaking Aramaic. It was a book in Arabic. I didn't know English. And what moved me was this courageous woman that was doing things, and her community had to survive, and how they took care of each other. And the story is what moved me and gave me an impression of what the United States might mean, or the kind of freedom that I would be experiencing there. So while I think that language is very important, and people should do, even just for spiritual purposes, connect to their native languages somehow. But at the end of the day, if that doesn't happen, it's really the story that we can share that is, to me, is the ultimate spirituality.
Well, it kind of goes into the last question that we have here that's in the studio, and then I'm going to get your final words and all that good stuff. Can storytelling really change how people see culture?
If it's true, yes.
I like that answer.
Yeah, don't be, you know, I will say this honestly, if from where I come from, there's a lot of like, you know, delusion and trying to change the narrative to make it look like, no, women are not, no, they are oppressed over there, and all this BS, and women do not have what I've found this out myself over the time and over making the film and things like that, they don't have oftentimes the freedom to choose between the hijab or not, and the things that go on. So I have confronted my own community about this and said, no, you are not telling authentic stories. And at some point that will be revealed. People are not dumb. They might fall into fake stories in the beginning, fake narratives. Yeah, we all, including me. I mean, I'm from that region, and I was saying, oh, you know, yeah, freedom of choice, da, da, da. But actions speak louder than words. And the action showed me like, oh, then your narrative, that story was fake because the actions are not matching. And so storytelling, it matters when it comes from truth. And sometimes when people do not want to see the truth, they will fight it for a long time, but give it time. Being patient. One of my mentors used to tell me, the hurrieder we go, the behinder we get. And I have what I do, even in my judgment about a certain community or a culture, before I jump on, I look and see what they're saying. And then I go and see, like in the Middle East, if people try to tell me, well, it's this, and they're giving me all these stories that are not matching, I say, well, you don't need to even read. You don't need to go to school to understand anything. Just take a snapshot, a screenshot of the Middle East, and tell me, where is that freedom for women? I don't even need to have this whole discussion. Just take that snapshot. And last year, in January 2025, in 1958, the legal age for girls was 18 years old to get married in Iraq. In 2025, after years of fighting for this, they lowered the age to 9. Yes. How you tell me how I can ignore, and then you tell me that the world there is this and that. All you have to tell me is that law passed after people, their own citizens, were fighting against it. They kept pushing it through parliament. So spirituality, another thing it helps you see, and I don't know if it's just in general spirituality or even shamanism, what we call the dark side. You have to be able to look at something honestly, and you can't just pretend. If your child is having issues, you can't just make it vanish by saying, oh, everything is okay. No, you have to sit and look at what you are fearing. You have to confront some of the most ugly truths about society, about yourself, in order to heal that. The only way you can heal what you're working on is if you have the courage to look at your dark side. And I encourage people, that is why my teachers were wonderful at this, because sometimes it's hard that we do it on our own. But when we, connect with the right people that help us find that path, it just makes it a little bit easier.
I'm so glad that you brought that to my attention, because I did a research on child marriages, and people did not believe me that there was child marriages going on in Canada. Like, child marriages need to, like 2025, there's something wrong with society if we're doing this in 2025. We're going to have a conversation after the show because you know,
I mean,
these are the conversations we need to start talking about. Like, you know, these are the conversations, these are the hard, ugly truths of the world that no one is talking about, that no one is bringing to the table. And I'm going to bring it to the table because I think it's wrong. We really need to stop turning a blind eye to this because this is
good for you. We need people like you that confronts this despite the criticism that you might get or people looking away. But at the end of the day, you know what? You can try to sweep this under the rug, but this happened. Go Google it. One, after all these years, how could you pass that how did that law pass? So when people try to tell me that there's a misunderstanding or there's this or that, go check that law. Who passed it? The parliament. These are the leaders of the country that did this.
And these are the people that are leading people. You know, there's something wrong with the leaders. It's not the people, it's the leaders. Start looking at the higher ends. You know, I've said this for years. I worked with a bunch of different organizations in 2020, and I found out so much about child marriages that is disgusting. This is one topic that really floors me. It gets me angry. You know, because hiding the truth is not the way to do it. Bringing the truth to the table is how we make change. If we hide everything and we just put a fancy little blanket on it or we sugarcoat it because everyone's too scared of the truth and it gets uncomfortable, we're not changing the world. We're not making a difference. And we're sure in the heck not making good examples for the children out there that are expecting us to protect them. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. That is one topic that it hits a nerve with me because I was 18 and I was forced to get married. So I know how it feels. But 18 is not 9. Think of a 9-year-old daughter. Think of a 9-year-old granddaughter. Would you like for her to be married? Like it signed off for marriage. Like, they don't even understand life yet. Their mind is not set yet. So let's really get those conversations going, that topic going. Miss Liz is open to those topics, and my listeners know that I'm not afraid. Red list me, come at me, but the hard topics really need to come out because that's what this tea time is about. It's not tea time of gossip and all of that. It is tea time of real truth and real hard, real life stories. That's what I'd like to bring to the table. So thank you, Weam, for bringing that. And
well, thank you for being so brave to welcome those conversations. And I did not know your viewpoint on this, but all I'm thinking of is how brave of you to give that much importance to something that is so important instead of, like, again, looking away because it feels easier maybe.
Absolutely. I'm so glad we got this conversation and we got to meet each other, and we're going to stay in touch because we're going to bring this to the table. You know, if we have to do a round table and we need to get these hard topics out there, Ms. Liz is willing to do it. I will make my platform about that. The truth story, the real truth has to come to the table. And for all my listeners that join me tonight, I really just want to thank you for joining in and asking your questions. These are real teas. These are not scripted teas. This is not a podcast. This is a mission. Miss Liz is on a mission to serve real life tea, to make a difference. Not the beverage, but people. So what final message would you have for everybody tonight? And how can they get your book and reach out to you to have you on other podcasts and all that stuff?
Well, they can, if anybody wants to email me, they can go on my website. There's a contact page, but all my books and my films are available on Amazon, Amazon Plus, Apple TV, YouTube. So it's very easy. They can just, once you Google my name on Amazon or on Amazon Prime, everything is on there. And regarding the message, I would say what's coming to me right now, invest in yourself. Instead of, before you go out there and save the world, work on yourself, and that will, the energy that you will shift within you will help shift the energy around your family, and be the better you are of a person inside, and the more you heal yourself, the better you will be for even for yourself and for society, and spread it that way. And it might take longer because you don't see the results. Some people jump to just help people because they can see results and they just feel, and I'm not saying don't help people, but I'm just saying that don't use that as a distraction. Look within and work on yourself first, because that will be an amazing gift, not just for yourself, but for the entire world.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciated this conversation. I appreciated getting to know you and meeting you. We're gonna definitely stay in touch, and
Yes.
we're gonna.
I would love that. I would honestly love that. Yes.
So I'm just going to give you a wrap up of what tonight's tea time was, and then we're going to be back next week, and we'll do this all over again. What a deeply enriching and powerful conversation. We thank you for sharing your journey, one that carries history, resilience, and a deep connection to both past and present. Your voice reminds us that our stories are not just personal, they are part of something much, much larger. Tonight, we were reminded that identity is layered, shaped by where we come from, what we're experiencing, and how we choose to move forward. Your work honors both memory and transformation, showing us that we can carry our past with us while still evolving into something new. Through your storytelling, your films, and your book, The Path of Consciousness, you invited us to look deeper, to understand ourselves beyond surface level living, and reconnect with meaning, purpose, and awareness. Here is something to carry with you after this tea time. What part of your story are you waiting to be honored, not hidden? Because within our stories, even the difficult ones, lies our voice, our power, and our connection to something greater. Until our next cup, keep sharing, keep exploring your roots, and keep honoring your journey, and keep sharing your stories with the world. And I'll see everybody next week, and we'll do this all over again.
Thank you.